Okay everybody, welcome back. You'll notice there'll be a number of changes made to the program since the last time you saw it for the first video. You can see that on the sprites I've added a few more. I've now got SPR_enemy and I've also got SPR_goal. I've got OBJ_enemy, OBJ_goal. I've now got a win screen and I've now got a lose screen. The only differences here is SPR_enemy and goal are exactly the same as we made them before. They're just regular graphics, 32 by 32 pixels, the default, and I've just coloured them in a different colour. Enemy I've decided to be a shade of magenta, and goal I've decided to be a shade of green. If you can do the same, thank you. Isn't that just a catchy piece of music? I hope you're getting the reference. So what we've got now is we're going to start with our enemy. Our enemy needs certain behaviours, and our enemy is going to be quite simple. All it's going to know is that it's going to start and it's going to move left and right on these different platforms. It's going to be bound between certain areas. It's going to be bound between this point and this point. It's going to know to move left and right when it makes contact with our player to destroy the player and to restart the game, but we're going to set that up. So the first thing we're going to do is with our OBJ_enemy, we are going to have that so when we do add event, and we're going to add a create event in exactly the same way we added before. So as soon as enemy is created, it's going to start behaving in a certain way. Now I'm going to add a little bit of variety to this here. I could easily say just move right, but we're going to add a little bit of randomness to it. If you did just want it to move right, lovely and easy, set our speed as we have done before. I'm going to set a speed of 5, and then we're going to add in a direction. We should know by now that a direction going right is 0. So you could do that, that would work absolutely fine. What we're going to do just to change this though, is we're going to add some random numbers just like we did before. I'm going to generate a random number. I'm going to generate an I random number. And because I want that to be a range of either 1 or 2, I'm going to use iRandom range. This is something that will be familiar to people if they followed the bonus tutorials for the spaceship game. So what I want to use here, iRandom range, again notice the values at the bottom. It's expecting 2 parameters, my lower number and my top number. I want my lowest number to be 1 and my top number to be 2. What this is doing is making a random number of either a 1 or a 2. We're going to use this to control an if statement, so if it's a 1 we're going to go left, if it's a 2 we're going to go right. In order to use this we're going to create a dice. Remember, dice is just a name, it's a variable name that we've set up to say store this piece of information. So just as before, I'm going to pop some comments in so we know where we are. Generate a random number between 1 and 2. Also, I wonder if you do remember the spelling mistake from the previous video. Points are still going begging. So generate a random number between 1 or 2. So we're generating that dice. I'm now going to write an if statement. If dice is equal to or 1, well, we're going to go that way. And if dice is equal to a 2, direction is going to equal 180, which is the opposite way round. Now we can make this even tidier if we want to. The power of if statements is they come with a predefined partner. In the same way that squigglies always need a partner, we can use the same thing with if. The predefined feature is if it's not going to be one thing, so in this case if it's not going to be a 1, we know it's going to be a 2. There's no other choice. It's only making a number of either 1 or 2. So what I can do with this if statement here is I can replace that instruction with else. And what else means, and these should be read together, if the dice is a 1, do this, or else do this. Now I'm going to use my tabs again, just tab on the keyboard, which is the one underneath tilde. If you don't know what tilde is the one underneath escape, and tab is the one underneath tilde. So what we have here is if dice equals 1, direction equals 0, or else direction equals 180. I'm going to leave the comments out here, we should know what they are by now, but you guys for good practice should be putting them in. So for testing, as before, we're going to see, does that work? For this to work, I'm going to place a bunch of enemies on screen. I'm going to put one there, going to put one there, going to put one there. Now what I'm interested in here, you'll notice I haven't used H speed or V speed, I'm just literally using speed as we did before. I've no intention of them falling off screen. So 1 went left, 1 went right. That means that it's working. So that's enough for us. That's exactly what I would hope for us to see. What we're going to do now is we're going to set up some collision detection with with them and a boundary to make sure that when they do touch that boundary, they bounce. Now, when we did Space Invaders, we had them bounce against the wall. That's not going to be enough for us because there isn't going to be a wall. We're going to generate a new one. I haven't made one yet, so we're going to make one together. Under sprites, we're going to right click and create a new sprite. We should be very good at this by now. SPR underscore, and I'm going to call this wall. This is going to be a very small wall. The reason why we haven't done this together yet is we're just going to use edit sprite, file, and new. This time, instead of being a width of 32 and a height of 32, I'm just going to use a width of 8. It's going to be very, very small. You'll notice, though, I am using multiples of 2. They're called power of 2 numbers. You don't necessarily need to know what they are, but it's useful to be aware that just like if you buy a stick of RAM in your computer, it's a multiple of 2. So it's either 2 or 4 or 8 or 16 or 32 or 64 or 128. These are things that are really easy for the computer to calculate. We don't necessarily need to be aware of that, but if you do want to go into true games development, it's something that's got a little bit of depth to it and you can go a bit further. I'm going to keep it with a width of 8 because I want them to be quite small. So with this now, I'm going to double click on it, same way we've done before, and I'm going to fill them in, and I'm going to fill this in black. This is going to make no difference the colour because we're going to make them invisible. We don't actually want the player to see these or to interact with these. I'm going to do the same trick. I'm going to make a new object and I'm going to call this obj underscore wall. Actually putting the O in, obj underscore wall, and that's going to be this black wall that we've created. All I'm going to do now is place some in obj underscore wall at the very end of the platforms. You do see the problem that this is encountering though, because the actual point of origin is not quite where we want it to be. It makes it very difficult to place. Now, I can't place at the very end there. You see, you can't put it in the middle, I can't put it in the end, and that is due to the snappings available on screen. Snaps are these little boxes that you can see on screen. Obviously, when you run the game, they're not visible, but they're there to make our life a little bit easier. The snappings on the X and the Y default to 32 by 32, which is why all your graphics default to 32 by 32, so they'll fit in nicely. We're going to change that and we're going to make them multiples of 8. So now I can control that much more clearly, and I'm going to put one there, going to put one there, going to put one there, and I'm going to delete this character just out of the way. Just want those two enemies that are set up. I am, however, going to go back to obj underscore wall, and I'm going to make it invisible. So when I run the game, they're going to be invisible. I'm going to put my snappings back to 32, just because I think it looks very, very busy on my screen. What I'm now going to say is with object enemy, as well as that create code that we've set up, just reminding you that's what it's doing, it's setting a speed of 5, generating a random number, it's either a 1 or 2, and going either right or left, depending on which number it generates. What we're now going to say is when I collide, remember we are the enemy now, when I collide with that new wall that we've generated, we are going to change direction. Now, if you can remember the way we did this before, pause the video and try and set this up for yourself. If not, we are going to change our speed. We're going to invert it. Speed equals, if you think you can remember it, give it a try, but it's going to be minus speed. Speed equals minus speed. Take what my speed is and swap it. So again, if we're going at a speed of 5, we're now going to go at a speed of minus 5 and vice versa. Let's play our game and see what that generates. My enemy, you can now see on the right hand side, is moving quite happily between those 2 points. Currently there's no collision detection, they're not interacting with our player in any way, but we can make it do that quite nicely. Okay. So the next step is going to be getting our enemy to destroy us and adding in some lose mechanics. We are going to have it say, when our player, and I'm going to do this all in the player, just because I like to keep all of my code and all of my events in the same place where possible, add a new event. When my player collides with the enemy, we're going to restart the game in exactly the same way that we did before. If you can remember what this is, again, pause the game, show off that you can remember what we're going to do. If not, don't forget that the key words here is game, because it's to do with a game control, and that brings up all of our game options. We can load, we can save, we want to restart. Again, remember, if you haven't remembered this so far, it's telling me that it's expecting a series of brackets at the end. So expect a start and an end bracket. Let's see what that does when I actually play the game. So they're still bouncing between those 2 points. I still can't leave the screen to the left. I'm going to jump, I'm going to collide with that, and that's fully restarted the game. So far, so good. We've got our AI movement. That's okay, but we're going to add in a series of lives instead. We're going to say that we can touch 2 of these baddies before the game actually makes us leave. So I'm going to need to touch both of them, or however many you want to do. To do this, we're going to go back to player, and in our create code, so on create, we're going to add a new bit of code here. For people that followed along with the bonus content for Space Invaders, we used HP. Here we're going to use lives. Lives are a pre-built-in variable, which is why it goes that same colour as gravity and direction. Whereas if we create something called HP, it doesn't. HP is new. Lives, however, are built in. So what we're going to do here is lives are going to be set up for our player, and we're going to have 2 lives. This works exactly the same way HP does if you want to follow along or introduce those yourself. I'm now going to say, when I collide with the enemy, instead of just restarting the game, we're going to add in some if statements. First thing I want to do though, before I do those if statements, is take lives down by 1. Lives minus equals 1 takes 1 away. And again, I can put spaces in to make that a little bit clearer. When I do this though, I like putting them together. Take 1 away, and then see what it is. If lives is less than or equal to 0, remember the less than and greater than signs are just above space between M and / on your keyboard, and I'm going less than or equal to 0. If the game is over, restart the game. Take 1 life away. Check if lives, that's really bad grammar, check if lives are reduced to 0. If it is, restart the game. And that's exactly what we're doing there. There is a challenge though, and let me show you this problem. You'll also encounter this with any shooting mechanics you introduce to your game. So I know that will work, and I'm going to jump, and I'm going to touch my enemy, and oh, the game restarted. That's surprising, we didn't expect that. We expected to touch the enemy twice. Let's use the debug mode, top corner there, the red one, to find out exactly what's going on. What I would like to look at here, using the debug mode, is I'm going to go to Tools and show the global variables, everything in my game. I haven't shown you this tool yet, but you can see that I've got my X and Y coordinates, so that's the position of my mouse on screen. I can see the last button clicked, so I can see left, right, middle mouse, 1, 2, 3. You can also see the last keyboard pressed, so then it returns a number for what was the last key that was pressed. But what I'm interested in here are these ones here, score, lives, and health. They're the predefined variables as well as the room size, and there's different things that I can see. So let's see what happens when I touch this enemy. It's definitely 2. And then it went from 1 to 2 really quickly. You might not be able to catch it, but it goes from 1 to 2 really quickly. The reason why it's doing this is every frame that the collision has occurred, it's taking 1 point of health away. And because the frame rate is so quick, 30 frames per second, it's removing my enemy. It's going from 2 to 1 to 0 faster than we can see. So we're going to fix that. When I collide with my enemy, currently I'm taking 1 life away and then seeing if that reduces. I'm going to add to this by getting rid of the other thing. Now we've done this before. With the other thing, we're going to get rid of this. Remember, there's a keyword to do with objects. Can you remember what that keyword to do with objects is? If you can, fantastic. Have some brainy points. If not, instance. Remember, it's to do with objects. It's about instances or instantiation. INSTANCE, instance. And we're going to destroy, instance underscore destroy. And a bit of comment to say that will remove the enemy. Let's see if that solves our problem. Okay, it's got rid of the enemy, and I'm going to touch the second enemy, and the game's restarted. So we have now a really good lose mechanic in place. Last thing we're going to add now is a win mechanic. We're going to have to jump over and go to the goal. The challenge that we've got now, though, is we've got this really good lose screen before we get there. We've got this lose screen that we've created. Currently contains nothing, but it's there. So what we're instead going to say is that when the player collides with the enemy, instead of simply restarting the game, what we're instead going to do is change our room. Room underscore go to. And again, this is where naming our rooms in advance becomes really important. Go to our win. sorry, go to our lose screen. And our lose screen, just for testing, jump in that character. We've gone to our lose screen. Currently really bland, but you could easily place things in there to make it look a lot better. So now let's do our win screen. Our win screen we're going to jazz up and make a little bit better, but we'll come to that in a second. I'm going to place in, at the end of my map, the goal, the place we're trying to get to. And from there, we're going to set up simple collision detection like we've already done. Again, if you think you can do this without my help, by all means go for it. So the player, when it collides with the goal, we're going to go to another room. Room underscore go to the win screen. Simple as that. Now the win screen looks exactly the same as the lose screen, so let's change that. What I'm going to change is the background of it. Now before I've shown you how on different rooms you can change the background colour to change that. What I'm going to show you now is how you can actually change it to a graphic. So I'm going to right click on my backgrounds tab, which is something we haven't used yet. And I'm going to create the background, load a background from file. I have a series of resources that I can use, and I'm just going to jump to the predefined ones. If I go to the libraries, if I go to pictures, let's have a picture of garden, why not? So what we're going to do here is press OK, and then what you can see is that that background is in place. And I'm going to replace that background with the one that I've now created. So that's background 0, and then that's replaced it with the graphic that I've chosen. So this just shows us quite clearly that that works. So object player, when object player collides with goal, it's going to go to the win screen, and on the win screen we have this graphic, just to make it clear that that is working. Let's go see if that works. So I touch that enemy, but I don't die. Can I evade this one? Yes, I can. Can I get to the goal? Yes, I can. And I'm rewarded by my beautiful graphic of my garden. So far, so good. Well done, everybody.